Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop. Today, it's a cozy, intimate conversation between me, host Nick Perron, and
me, Rio. I love intimacy.
I don't fear it at all.
This is going to be so cozy.
Today we wanted to talk about a little thing called technology. So Rio and I were talking a little bit off mic about how in TTRPGs specifically, there is always this kind of stumbling block that I don't know if any system has really gotten 100% right yet, which is technology and how to represent it in the game. So a great example to start us off is like gun damage in D&D. You know, there's different versions of like guns, like black powder blunderbusses, all the way to like ray guns that are in D&D, and they do like 2d8 damage max, and you shoot them once at somebody, and then you kind of move on. It functions very much like a great sword or any other sort of weapon, which doesn't feel like technology. It doesn't feel like a gun in real life, where it's like this hyper dangerous thing. Same thing with like games where like Eberron, where there are trains and all these other things that are active in the system, but also are competing with magic and other things. So we'll just kind of set that up. Sorry, what did you say?
I said Eberron has robots too.
Fully sentient robots.
Yeah.
So, Rio, what do you think about this? Why is it so hard for a TTRPG to encapsulate technology in all of its different forms in both a mechanical and just like a way for GMs to be able to use in their campaigns easily? Well, why is there always that stumbling block?
Here's the thing, Nicholas. I don't think people understand technology in real life. So how are you going to make rules? I don't know, like, how things work. If my laptop gives me any issues, I don't have a laptop anymore. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know how to interact with it. I don't know what skills to use.
Yeah.
And then if I run a game using, go.
But people don't know, how to use magic, and they don't know how to use swords and knives and stuff.
But magic is so unknowable that you can make any rules up you want, and it doesn't have to make magic doesn't have to make as much sense as technology does, I think.
So you're saying that like the big block that is hard to design around is that there is a reason technology functions.
Right. You know how a train works. So you're trying to make mechanics for a train. It's the uncanny valley of concepts.
Mm.
Like
it really is. That's such a good way to put it. I'd never thought of it that way, but this in general, it is smart. Always uncanny valley, where you like have something put into a setting and you're just like, oh, this is sort of weird. It kind of functions in a way that's just like, it is off enough from like being able to suspend disbelief that you're just like, yeah, this doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Why don't we just go back to using the knives?
Right. To veer away from our lighthearted comedy podcast. If you like, we've seen sword fights.
Yeah.
And those are like, oh, they're long, and you see a guy get cut a couple of times. But in a gunfight in like television or movies and media, you get shot once, you're out. You're out. So how do you convert guns then, like in D&D, to your fantasy setting where people are supposed to be hit by things multiple times? Like you get hit by a bolt of lightning in D&D, and you'll be fine. Real life, no. But we've accepted magical lightning to be as part of swords because we don't use swords. We don't understand the concept of swords as much. But we all know, like, you're getting hit with one bullet and you're game over. I don't care if you have 160 HP or 12. So I think when you're trying to write rules for guns, like you were saying, 2d8 doesn't seem like enough because in our minds, all guns are one shots. You get hit with a gun once, boom. So how would you break the cognitive block that you would have going, oh, this has to act like a great sword or a battle axe, things I don't really recognize being one shot instant kills, because obviously, like, if you get hit in the neck with an axe, you're just as dead. But HP mechanics we just, with technology, it's so familiar. We don't want to break the core tenets and turn it into a dice game.
Yeah, I think that you're right, because like I was starting to go into a bunch of ideas. Yeah, as always. I was going into my mind. I was thinking of a bunch of different design ways you could alter how, like in D&D, a gun functions to make it feel better. Like the first thing I thought of is, using a gun. It's actually fairly hard to hit somebody at range. So you could just really reduce down the range of the gun skills. And make the to hit value basically 0, So like if you roll, you're just doing a straight D20 roll, the variance is going to be crazy. But when you shoot them, you're going to do crazy damage. Another thing I was thinking about is like, plate armor would stop a bullet. It would stop certain types of bullets, at least like a 22 or something.
At least the flintlock technology that.
Yeah, exactly. Like a thick metal plate would just be able to stop certain types of firearms. Man. And so then you could have
with Mythbusters.
yeah. I remember that one too. They put that mannequin through so much.
A poor guy.
Yeah.
Person.
But the thing I was saying there is that then you could just have like, this weapon is only effective on things that have an AC value of less than 18 or whatever it is. But then what happens there is it becomes incredibly like crunchy. Like then you're having a lot of work to be able to have this thing in the game, because then not only does the GM have to adjudicate a lot of these things, but then you could be like the more kind of secondary rules that you put on something, the less people, especially new players, are going to want to be able to use it, because then the dissonance comes from like, I can't function the way that I want to in this game because so many restrictions have been put on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, once you start trying to homebrew around the concept, they're just going to have to be at ranged, and you need to make them more deadly than a bow and arrow, but still on the same scale as all the other weapons. And it's going to feel weird, which is why you should just take guns out and use wands. Because as a great man once said, magic is indistinguishable from any advanced enough technology. So just advance your tech beyond the industrial modern era, and you're back into fantasy. Boom, solved it. Man, we're smart. We did it.
Yeah, but this is so this is actually what got me thinking about this yesterday, because I was playing a session with that group who we were working on the siege for.
Your other friends.
For other friends. For folks at home, I am doing sort of an end of campaign set of sessions for a group, and they are going through sort of a siege of this floor of a city that they live on in a mountain. And so they are at the base level and are trying to repel the rest of the mountain as they try to subjugate the area that they are in back into compliance with the sort of caste system that is happening. And one thing that I kept running into is like, there are cool things that I was trying to do, like, they're cutting the mana ley line so that the power that is like fueling all of these arcane lanterns on the floor are starting to go out, which makes fighting harder because you're in complete darkness. And one thing, we got to a point where they were they went up to the sort of power lines that all the mana went through, and they were trying to fix things. And they were like, so how does this work? How can I like work to fix this? And I was like, you look at it and it's like a circuit breaker, but magic. And so, and that's always what happens for me when I think of, sort of trying to bring in ideas from the modern world, like, a power source and like having to defend assets like that so that you can still fight at peak efficiency, but then translating them into sort of a fantasy setting is just tough, especially on the fly. So like, you've run so many campaigns and we've kind of gone all over the map in genre. Like some of them are high fantasy, some of them are low fantasy, some of them are more sci-fi, some of them are more like Miyazaki cutesy sort of thing. So, but like, I remember when you were doing your Candy Fungeons, there was that one where there was the skeletons that kept coming back with like the lanterns that were glowing, and we had to figure out where the power source of the lanterns were.
Oh, yeah.
So like, you've kind of had to deal with this as well. So like, how do you kind of go about trying to make it feel like you're not breaking immersion in the world while still being able to sort of use what your players know from their lives to describe what is happening to them, I guess.
Bold of you to assume I thought of that.
Listen, Rio, I honestly think that it probably was so instinctual. You are so talented that it just flowed out of you. And now I'm just kind of putting the framework around it.
Well, you got everything is a draw of everything that you know, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever played Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah, I love that game.
On the Xbox or the 360.
Yeah.
And then the Star Wars role-playing game is very like 5e-esque or 3.5-esque back in the day. I haven't touched the book in forever. But yeah, the Star Wars role-playing games give you sort of a tie-in because Star Wars is basically
magic,
tech wizards in space.
Yeah.
But they just added in like if we were doing this for 5e, which is our most familiar. Man, I wish Franco was here to bitch about it. If we were doing this in 5e, then we would just add, I think, sort of an engineering stat into the big list of skills, and then it would just be an intelligence plus proficiency. Like, okay, you want to fix the cables? Boom, make an engineering check. Not proficient in engineering, roll a and we can kind of use the mechanics that exist to create a way of interacting with things that we don't understand.
They kind of tried to do this with artificers, right? They kind of tried to do this with artificers and like a lot of their sort of mechanics around building magical items and sort of engineering stuff. They kind of have done this, and we can talk about whether or not they're successful later. But is that what you're talking about, of sort of making it a mechanic for a class or something?
No, not for a class. For everyone.
Oh, just like as a stat line. Yeah.
Yeah. Because even if you can't cast a fireball, you would still know how wires are connecting into a fuse box.
Right.
You would still have the same potential of being able to solve it, because it would be a system that would have rules. There'd be physical components that you can interact with without needing to know how to channel like arcane energy yourself. Yeah. So you could just make it a general, like, if your world is going to have technology based on magical energies, then your character sheet needs to have something for all the players to track how good they are interacting with those systems.
Yeah. I think that is a really great segue too, to start thinking, because we were also kind of talking about one of our favorite shared
worst technology.
One of our favorite shared settings is Cyberpunk. We both love Cyberpunk 2077. Both of us are really interested in getting into like Cyberpunk Red and maybe some of the other systems that are kind of adjacent to that. They basically have to deal with tech in a real big way because it is a fundamental pillar of that setting. We were kind of talking about this on text the other day of like, wait, what sort of cyberware would you get? What would you do here? Like, and then we were sort of like, I don't think we would ever do any because it's all horrible. And like the actual realities of how all that stuff works is kind of built into the game, but is also kind of reliant on the fluff and the lore and how the game master is kind of setting you up in the story to sort of make really clear to people. So like, for example, there's a specific mechanic where if you get cyberware, it affects your humanity score. And if you lose too much humanity too fast, you essentially become a cyber psycho, you become a threat, and the GM gets to take your character and make them into sort of a monster. It's a very cool idea, but also like that requires a level of teaching your players, hey, the link between technology being applied to a human body and mind also leads to a level of psychological stress that also leads to a loss of functioning reason and a ability to be a human in like kind of a normal way. And so when you are making your choices as a player, you have to also factor in all of these things that are sort of lore fluff, but that have been made into sort of mechanical realities. So I don't like. I've heard such mixed things about Cyberpunk Red as a system, where some people I've talked about are like, this system is so complicated and crunchy. There's like a list of like 150 skills like that you choose from when you're building a character. That's too many skills. But then
it is too many.
Yeah, it's just like that's a huge amount. That's almost impossible to look through when you're a new person, especially.
I wish I had more hands-on experience to like talk about it directly. But as you're saying, I think any sort of gaming mechanic system is going to have that sort of give and take of here's power, here's the risk of that power.
Because you have to balance it, right?
Yeah, because even if you look at oh my gosh, old school rule sets,
OSR, yes,
OSRs. But like the ones that I play with Franco, friend of the podcast. Is you have
Franco's gonna listen to this in Spain and be like, those motherfuckers.
He has 10. You have 10 things on your inventory list, and those 10 things that you can carry are also your skills, your powers.
Yeah,
like I think you can hold a spell in one of your slots. And if you have 11 things, then I think that your character becomes half as effective. Like they can't move, they can't. They have to drop something or before they can continue. And I think in systems with like cyberware or other things, it's like you have this many slots that you're safe using. And then if you want to have your 5th installation, here's what you're going to risk. And we're going to roll that check at the time that you take on the over encumbrance. So it's like, do you want to risk it all for glory? And if you're playing a dice game, the answer should be yes.
But okay, I'm going to stop you right here
dice,
because
what happens?
Because I 100% agree with you, but I think that almost probably 70% of players would disagree with that assessment. They're like, why would I risk being a functional character? Like, this is my character, I like them. Why would I do all of this stuff? But I want to do the
answer
thing.
And their backstory and their role play. Find the answer for why you would interact with the game. That's on you, bud.
But I think that, like, I mean, let's fess up. I think both of us in our past, maybe not in our current heightened forms, our third evolution, but maybe in our starter forms, both of us probably had those moments of like, I don't like, why am I suffering all of these consequences? Why is this all like, why am I being saddled with limitations or threats almost, you know, like in the cyberware thing, it's like, hey, if you mod up too quickly, you're going to fuck everyone else up and your character is going to basically be gone.
Does that happen? Because even playing the video game, like you can just get as many you never have to actually deal with it. It never affects you, the player. It is a lore threat, but you in the game can just do whatever the fuck you want.
Well, that's a very unique case because like in the video game, you have Johnny in your head, as you know, and like the lore reasoning there that you don't go fucking cyber psycho is that Johnny is sharing the load of the cyberware. So because it's 2 brains essentially being able to process this instead of 1. So in the game, what I've heard is like you get a mechanical arm and you have to essentially do like 3 weeks of therapy to be able to sort of regain some of your humanity stat. To be like, hey, my arm is working and it is part of me rather than this crazy thing that is a killer appendage. So
and that's why we have our stages of play then, because you know the adventure, the downtime, you know.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to spend downtime reestablishing fine motor skills with a mechanical arm, then that's one of those clocks that we've talked about. And go ahead and put clocks on people. Like you have a blank clock, and that is the clock that determines how acclimated you have come to this new mechanical piece of yourself, the cyberware. And then you have another clock that the DM knows about It's like if they don't acclimate within this clock, and it'll go down every long rest or every combat encounter, it clicks off.
Yeah.
Then they take cyberpsychosis because they stressed themselves out faster than they worked to adapt.
Yeah.
And maybe you have a little background clock. It's like, okay, the more times they do this, the more clocks they have running, the harder they all are to finish, or the quicker they all count up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, there are ways to do it mechanically with but that's Blades in the Dark clockwork coming into Cyberpunk, coming into my understanding of 5e engineering skills, rolling checks like that. So it really, I guess, what kind of tech you want to have in your game versus does tech sort of fill in for magic? Because I think a lot of settings, they go, you can either be magic or you can be technological. And I think the question
it does feel like a binary sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah. Where you're either sci-fi or you're fantasy. Yeah. But you're never science fantasy.
Yeah.
Which I think is where we started. How do we get to science fantasy from science fiction and fantasy?
You brought up a really interesting point that I think is a great example of this, which is the Warforged, which is, they are robots, right? They are sentient beings that have been created and sort of made into.
They are more than meets the eye.
Yeah. And so that, and in a way they function. Is that a Transformers joke? I was like, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, let's keep going. And I was like, oh my fucking God. Man, I just got Optimus primed. Damn. Let's see, where was I? So Warforged. So that is a really interesting thing too, because if a player is a Warforged, then they are sort of a technological creation that is piloted by a PC, or is piloted by a player. But as a GM, I've never seen anybody interact with a Warforged in a way that is like, your programming is doing this or you are doing this. Is that, you're more of a D&D lore person than I. Are Warforged, are they billed as robots in the fluff? Are they sort of
no.
They are? Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
They are sentient, soul-having creatures whose bodies are just made out of stone and wood versus flesh and blood. So they don't have programming. They're not built in a lab and turned on. They are born, and I believe what's called a soul forge. Mm-hmm. But you'd have to check site sources for that. And then again, I think you have the droids in Star Wars. But again, my only interaction with that rule set is when they made it a video game.
Yeah, right.
And the droids are more it's harder to figure out how you would play a droid when it's a character option you have in your party. Mm-hmm. Because obviously, the droid talks and beeps, but I'm still controlling it as a tool from my player character's perspective. But it is interesting how you would play a robot that had to deal with programming. Because, for instance, one of the biggest robotic lores that I know is the iRobot. With the 3 rule of robotics. Which what are they? The never harm a person, never allow a person to come to harm, and never by action or inaction break the first 2 rules or something like that.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So would you play a PC who had to adhere to those 3 rules?
I mean, I would, because I think that would be fucking rad.
Right, yeah. But it'd be no difference. I don't think it'd be any different than a paladin being like, I'm loyal to Tyr, and Tyr says, kill evil where you see it. You don't have you can still run away from a fight, but your programming, your dogma says, you have to fight. And then I think if you're playing a robotic character, your programming would be you have to do this. But because it's a game, because there's mechanics and you're a person, you could go, here's the logic loop that I'm going to role play is happening that allows me to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah, this is something I think this really gets to the essence of the conversation too, where it's like, how do you make things feel like we think technology works? And for me, like, the way that I would want to do that is more of like in a deck building game where like I have to pull cards, and judging by what cards I pull each turn, maybe there's like a glitch card, or maybe there's a like your programming like reboot or whatever. Like there's things that would come in and would, make things kind of harder for me, things that I had to work around, limitations. And I do feel like that might be the key to this whole sort of rigmarole, which is what are the limitations that the technology imposes upon you? For example, like maybe guns can work in D&D and they can work in the way that we expect them to, of like generally a one-shot kill for normal humanoid creatures, like you shoot them in the head and the person's dead. But maybe it's like, hey, you're in the wilderness, you can't find more bullets. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got the 6 bullets that you have.
Yeah, you have 6 bullets. And when you use those, you're going to be like crazy powerful and you're going to be able to do some crazy stuff. But if you just start using them on wolves in the woods, then you're going to be out. You're going to have a gun that you can hit people with, very quickly.
Well, you also have the other drawbacks, which is that it makes a loud noise.
Yeah.
And it produces a smell of gunpowder. So
yeah,
if you're playing in a fantasy realm, you made something smell like smoke and fire.
Mm-hmm.
Great. You have 6 shots. And you've attracted a dragon. A dragon thinks there's another dragon in its territory. Because you fucked with the senses. So if you need a drawback to using technology, it's like, okay, yeah, you have this 6 shots of a one-hit kill, again, against humanoids, because as we've established, trolls and ogres and giants and monsters don't take bullet damage.
Yeah.
Slasher movie rules.
The Jason Voorhees out there are like, yeah, whatever.
the Jason Voorhees protocol. Bullets don't work if the monster is scary enough.
Yeah. I also think you could like what you're talking about kind of inspired in me too, like the sound that it makes. Maybe it's like every time you shoot near, like within, 5 feet of somebody, that everyone who's close to by you has to make like a save against being stunned because this huge like explosion sound just, happened near their body, and it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, again, those are like real problems. Deafness can be caused from like being too close to the gun going off.
Yeah.
So great, you've one-shotted your foe, but now you've attracted monsters and you're deaf. You don't have as many senses as available, and you got to roll recoveries. Well, I don't know why you shot that guy in the woods, but perhaps he's got friends now, and they know exactly where you are because you just announced your presence because you have this Uber tech, but the Uber tech has common drawbacks. It's like a science fiction writing prompt. Don't invent the car, invent traffic.
Yeah.
So it's like if you want to put tech into your games, you have to think, okay, here's the tech, here's what it does, but what's the next 2 steps beyond that? Like, what do you think what is it going to bump up against? And if you answer that question, then I think it's really no difference than putting anything else into your games.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a really smart way to put it because Warhammer has a lot of these things that they've done, like the Mechanicus faction, which is, the tech wizards, essentially. They have certain they have certain types of machines. Like one of my favorite ones I found out recently is that they have these like walkers, like they're 2-legged sort of walking robots that people can get on and like will shoot, and they have like heavy ordnance on them. However, they're very fast. What did you say?
I said the Texas Rangers.
Yes, exactly. They're the Texas Ranger mobiles. But they're on it, has heavy ordnance. They're super powerful. However, and they don't run on fuel. They just they're perpetual motion machines. But the mechanicists don't really know how they work anymore. And so when they're storing them, they essentially put them on giant big treadmills because they're like, we don't know how to make it start walking again. So we're just going to keep it walking forever. And when we need to use them, we'll just dump it onto the battlefield and it's like always moving. And when it's done, we'll just pick it back up and put it back on the treadmill.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Technology that you yourself don't understand. So you just have to figure, okay. That's another way.
I mean, that's kind of going back to what you were saying at the beginning about your laptop. That's essentially what that is, right? Like if it breaks, you're like, I don't know how to fix this. It's basically useless to me now.
It's just a very fancy paperweight.
Yeah, and so all of your effort goes into the how do I stop it from being broken rather than how do I fix or how does this work? Maybe that's
how is it functioning and how do I continue that function without altering it in any way?
Yeah, like maybe that's the thing is like when you have like technology that is either very complex or very like something that a average Joe might not know how to use or how it works. Like for me, airplanes are crazy. They just work. The air pressure, I know a little bit about it, like pushes under the wings. It's designed in a way that I guess makes it fly. That's fucking crazy. But if I were in a GM seat and someone was like, I'm building an airplane, then I think that, or like I have this airplane, how is this working? Am I going to be able to do this safely? Then like I as a GM can't really say, well, you have to remember that this little part here is like what you're going to need to be able to make this fly. It's sort of just, it works, like it will work unless something about it goes wrong. And unless your character or you as a player can tell me how that is going to happen, then like it's just going to break and we don't know how to fix it. You know what I mean?
No, I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Cool. Yeah.
But like you don't have to know how everything in your world works in order to have it in your world. Yeah. So like, you're talking about getting lost in like super details because, and I think this is where we started. We have technology and we feel like we need to know how it works. Whereas with magic, we feel like, oh, well, this is just magic. I can cast Dimension Gate and the 2 points will exist. And you're like, oh, I have an airplane. Oh, but how does the airplane function? How does it take off? What do I need to know? It's like, you don't. Just treat your airplanes like magic and go, this is designed to fly. And so it just will.
Yeah.
Unless something counterspells it.
Yeah.
Like attacks an engine or does something, above top board. We would know a ship getting damaged on the water would sink. So we know a plane getting struck in the air will fall.
Yeah.
Or maybe float up higher to the sky. If you want to play with you have airships. Just they get damaged, they just capsize,
start flying out into
and they just fly out into space.
Yeah, they become spelljammers.
Maybe all spelljammers are airships that opposite of sunk.
Yeah. The Astral Sea literally just has a bunch of shipwrecks up there, and they're fully functioning spelljammers.
Just a bunch of airships that capsize the other direction.
Yeah, I think that maybe maybe this is where we leave it, is that like things that are really complex that you're putting in your world to add like layers of complexity or just like trying to flesh the world out a little bit. Most people, unless they're trained to do it, don't understand how a lot of things work around them. I mean, there's like I was reading this article about how people are starting to forget how to cook because they like delivery is so prevalent now that you like people are just like, I don't really know how to cook. So if I want something that tastes good, I just order it. And that's actually in Cyberpunk. All of the food is from vending machines. None of the apartments that you have in any of the games have stoves.
Lord knows if I lost the ability to order food to me, I would not eat again. I
ever.
don't know how chicken works. I don't know
Yeah.
how anything happens in that room. That's not that room's not for me.
Yeah. I respect what spaces I am allowed in. You know what I mean? So any final thoughts on technology and how to sort of have it function in your games? I think that we've sort of talked. I really like a lot of the stuff that you were saying around like treat it like magic, or create limitations. Like when you're creating the technology that exists in your world, create the effects of it that maybe aren't so great. Like you said, traffic instead of the car, and then work from there. Any other things that are to drop some juicy little nuggets of wisdom before we shut this down?
No, just know your setting. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to make? And don't go too far in any direction that's off yet that main goal line.
Yeah.
Like if
Okay,
you
I
want to
just thought of a
do
really good question for you before we
great.
shut this down, and maybe it's going to make this longer. But I just remembered because we had an episode like towards the beginning of this podcast where we talked about how you love to create biomes and sort of like food charts and ecosystems of
Oh yeah, you get
biological
lost in those
natures. You know what I
details.
mean?
I'd imagine this is exactly the same.
Yeah, right. It's so like what are the things that you found when you're doing that work, which is very similar to this because like a lot of people don't really understand the full complexities of an ecosystem, right? And if you're creating one for your world for yourself, maybe we can apply some of the things that you've learned how to do that
Yeah.
into the technological sphere. So anything there that you would suggest from your experience?
Well, I have to put guardrails up.
Yeah.
So I'll start with like if I'm going to have a predator in the area. Like I think in the last game I was running, I had a Red Valley Bruin, which is basically just this bear that channeled lightning. So it's like a magical beast.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, that's my one apex predator. I don't need to populate this region with 1,000 different apex predators, but you start with your one thing and you're like, okay, well, what's competing with this? Like what other predator, like what one other predator is here? So if it's a solitary hunter, what is maybe like a pack animal that it also exists here?
Yeah.
And then, so now I have two predators. So, okay, what are three species that exist that like are moving herds or like that would be a food source for these two predator types?
Yeah.
And then go down. Okay, well, I have three herbivores. What are five major like plant forms that sort of talk to the setting? And then like in that method of doing it, you have your I'm making my biome and it's great, but everything's limited to what was you start at the top with one and you kind of like go up. I think what a lot of times what people do is they want to start at the bottom and they go, I will have 100 different things.
Yeah,
And
they
then
go wide.
and then it gets bigger as you build up.
Yeah.
And I think you start at the top and sort of just like make sure it's supported by what you have otherwise. And in this game,
I
if you
like this. Yeah.
technology and stuff, start with like what your big tech thing is. Like and
Yeah,
start
like what is the dominant
yeah.
technology? Like what did they crack? Like for in our society, we have cracked information. We have the internet, we have cell phones, all that kind of stuff. So we have figured out our apex technology is the free flow of information, the free accessibility of information. And then so that would be your like apex technology.
Yeah, so you have
like
so all information is available. Boom. Now you have mobile data centers and you have standalone units. As there are two pieces of technology. Like, do people have, what are they carrying on them that lets them access this technology? And then like what is available for people who don't have that personal technology?
Yeah.
And then you can just go on. And then what happens otherwise? Well, you have a lot of the same problems. You have misinformation lobbed up on there. And then you have people blocking information and trying to take it off the web, and people are trying to put it back on. And
it kind of reminds me. Yeah, like what you were talking about with the apex predator, you also always in an ecosystem have things like those birds that hang out with crocodiles and like eat the things out of their teeth. You know what I'm
Oh yeah,
talking
yeah,
about?
yeah.
So
Symbiotic
like,
relationships.
yeah, so you could have so this free flow of information is the apex technology, let's say, but then maybe you have sort of like parasites off of that of like, okay, well, if you have all this access of information, the problem is maybe that like you need whatever this thing that allows you to access all the information to be able to interface with a lot of just like normal things like, you know, shop hours or how to get into a town or the rules of an area, like all is in this one data thing. So if you don't have access to that, then that becomes your traffic jam. You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
if everybody is able, like you were saying, are trying to put information on to change how people see a certain area, like false information, or they're just changing the information so that people act differently, that becomes the traffic jam, and that you can sort of
Yeah.
build out those things from there.
And again, that depends on the story you're trying to tell and the game you're trying
Totally.
to run.
Yeah.
And those are things you need to kind of know in the background before you start doing all this other stuff.
Yeah. And like we were talking about
You don't
earlier
know
with
what your
like,
traffic jams are going to be if you
yeah.
don't have the road built out. Like you don't know where you need to know what you are going to want to try to do before you know how what you have is going to be affected by it. If that makes any
Yeah, I
sense.
think no, I think that this is really making me kind of like light up a little bit because like Dune, the book has like a great version of this. And going back to our conversation about guns, like, are you familiar with Dune? Have you read
Yeah, I've
all of
read
them?
Dune. I've read the
Okay.
first one and I've seen the first movie.
Okay, great. So you know how they all fight with like knives and swords and stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
because the apex technology that they had
The
were
body
laser
shield.
guns, you know, and then to
Yeah.
counter that, they created the body shields. But it's not that it counters it. It's just that if a laser hits the body shield, a nuclear bomb goes off. And
Oh, really?
so, yes, because the deflector like activates and the photons that have been shot at the shield get split. And so that's basically the atom splits and then there's a nuclear bomb. And so that's why everyone was sort of like, we still have that technology, but everyone uses the knives and then they use them slow enough and like very deliberate because the shields that they all have will activate if you swing a knife like way too fast at them. And so it's all about slowly placing the knife into somebody. In a way that they can't stop, but slow enough that the shield doesn't activate. So like, this is a great example of that ecosystem you were talking about, that like you had an apex technology that's still untouched, and then all of these solutions that have come out of that apex technology to try to still do the things that people want to do. Cool.
Is that a question?
I think we cracked it. We figured it out.
Yeah.
No, I was just like, we did it. I hope everyone enjoyed this sort of conversation. I would like to start having some conversations like this where we don't have answers and we're just trying to figure it out. If you have ideas about how to use technology in a way that feels really good in your games, things that have been super successful, please send it in to us. I would love to hear about it, either via our Discord, which you can find on our website, tabletopppod.com, or that contact form, which is on the same website. Send in some of those solutions you found. I would really love to discuss them with Rio in a future episode. All right, everyone. We will see you next week. And Rio, thanks for having this cozy fireside chat with me.
Hey, thanks for not springing intimacy on me.
All right, everyone. See you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.